these are players that are really high quality, and I think they could surprise a lot of people who aren't familiar with how great they can be. Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. There's only one correct answer, and that's the win, and that's always the case for Brazil. I think it's the case again this year. Anything less than that is failure.
Even for a team that is always amongst the favourites, this year's squad looks particularly scary. With depth in every position and currently unbeaten in 35 games, it feels slightly cruel on them that the only team that getting close to them is their arch rivals. In a group with Serbia, Switzerland, and Cameroon, they'll be gazing much further than the groups and maybe even towards a sixth star. And here to talk all things Seleção with me is host of FC Santos in English, Peter. How are we doing, man?
I am doing really well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure. Thank you. We've been trying so hard to get every country, and we thought we cannot release these videos unless we have someone to talk Brazil, right? You have to have Brazil if it's a World Cup pod. So really, you're saving the series, I'll be honest. But to start off with, we always ask our guests, where are you calling us from?
I'm calling from Detroit, Michigan, in the United States.
Very nice. Now, just before I hit record, you were telling me about how you got into Brazilian football, and it was really fascinating. So, how did you find yourself a fan of Santos?
Yeah, so I'll try to give the most abridged version. It kind of happened in stages, but essentially, my grandfather was a big fan of excellence in sports, I guess, or sports. In general, and grew up admiring, or was an admirer of Pelé. That translated into him having a book at his house that I would read when I was growing up, and that had a spread on what they would call Pelé and Friends, the great Santos teams of the 1960s. And so at this point, of course, I'm an American, and basically growing up only caring about ice hockey. I didn't know anything about the sport of what I would call at the time soccer, but all I knew really was this club Santos in Brazil, Pelé, and that was about it. So when I eventually caught World Cup fever in 2006, that was all I knew, and so I was like, okay, this is my club. I didn't understand that the separations between continents or the different structures of the leagues. All I knew was Santos was what I liked, and so I started following them.
That's incredible. Honestly, there's two things. One, you catching World Cup fever at 2006 makes me feel incredibly old, but also there's like a running joke on our podcast because a lot of us play Football Manager that we cannot understand the Brazilian leagues. Every time we play it, it just melts our brains trying to understand it. So at some point, we're going to get you onto the pod to explain just how the Brazilian league system works.
I would absolutely love to. I'll explain to you how it works. If you want the logic behind it, you're going to have to talk to someone else because I think everyone looks at it and says, what on earth are you guys thinking?
It is absolute insanity, but we are here to not talk about the Brazilian Football League. We're here to talk about the football team, and this is a pretty terrifying looking Brazil squad. I would usually ask how comfortable or uncomfortable was the qualification process for the country, but Brazil, it was pretty comfortable, right?
Oh, more than comfortable. They finished first, top of the pile. In their qualification. They finished with a record amount of points as well for the 18-game qualifiers, and they didn't even play all the 18 games. If you remember, there was that ridiculous situation in Brazil where the three Argentine players, they started playing the game, and the Brazilian officials came out and said, you broke COVID protocol, you've got to go. And so the game was abandoned after, I think it was 5 minutes. And they just never ended up playing. So they only played 17 games, and they still finished with a record amount of points for qualification. So yeah, it was comfortable. And keep in mind, you could say some of the other South American teams aren't as strong. I'm thinking of Uruguay, Chile, Colombia, obviously. But it's never fun to go to a place like Bolivia or Peru and play these qualifiers. So yes, they breezed through. But there were some tough games, and there were some, it's never fun.
Yeah, well, I think it's kind of often like from a European point of view, people often underestimate how difficult it is to the qualification process in South America because it's one division. And as you said, you're playing in some pretty extreme conditions. I think it's a lot harder than people realize. And with those teams, like you mentioned, Chile and Colombia not quite being what they used to, there are some teams emerging like Ecuador that are really surprising people. And I think there was still a lot of competition there. So for Brazil to get through so easily is very impressive. I can't wait to talk about the squad, but first we need to talk about the manager. How do Brazilian fans feel about him, and what would you say his philosophy towards football is?
Oh, it's funny that we had the call-ups just recently, and I think I think most people would say there's at least one head scratcher. I'm hinting at Dani Alves. But I think generally people think that he is a capable manager. I think that he is going to be, viewed as perfectly able. There's no reason that he wouldn't be able to, put together a challenger squad. It's interesting. I was looking at some of his stats for this interview, and he's done really well, of course, and succeeded in Brazil, but and throughout the Middle East and some of these other countries, but no experience really in managing in Europe. But in terms of philosophy, so he is the student of Filipao, which is Luis Felipe Scolari, who was, of course, the last Brazilian manager to win the World Cup. And he's promised, he's gone out of his way in the press build-up to this World Cup to promise a very attacking style of football. So, and of course, I mean, it's Brazil. That's what you'd expect, especially with the players they have, especially this year. So I think that's a little bit, it may sound a little boring and kind of expected, but I think that's what you're going to get from Brazil this year.
Nice. Well, I think it's kind of refreshing to hear it in a way, because I think when Dunga was manager, it wasn't a particular style of football that we associate with Brazil, and it ended in pretty catastrophic style. So I think hearing that they're going back to the kind of back to basics or back to what they're known for, I think is good to hear. And yeah, I'm intrigued to see what he is as a coach, because I'll be honest, I don't know much about him. So it'll be interesting to see how tactically how he deals with it and how he keeps the squad this stacked kind of happy and how he balances it. So obviously a lot of the players we know, Dani Alves being in the squad is a bit of a weird one. What did you make of that when you saw it?
Yeah, I think, I mean, there was some chatter on Twitter and elsewhere and in the news, including from reputable journalists, that he was going to be included. And I think, for me at least, the justification that I can find is that he's a locker room guy, right? He's popular with a lot of the core players, Thiago Silva, Neymar, obviously, that he's very close with. And I think they wanted him there. And I think he's going to be a great leader. They've got that core of players that are, just entering their 30s or early 30s. But then they've got a lot of young kids like Rodrigo, Vinicius, Martinelli got the call. So I think he's going to be a great mentor for them. And I think that's really what he's Chiche. I'm not sure if actually we mentioned the coach's name. Chiche is his name. But I think that's what he was thinking when he made the call. He, of course, is a right back he's played in midfield as well. But I don't really think he's even. I think things would have to go very wrong for him to see, time on the pitch in an important match. But I think it's an experience call, and I think it's leadership more than anything.
Nice. I think, and you often hear about, like with Spain, for example, when they won it, Pepe Reina, the goalkeeper, never played a minute. But then when everyone looks back, they go, that guy in the changing room was absolutely key. He got us through some tough moments. So I think maybe you're right. And it's kind of that, the dynamics of a squad is so important, and the happiness. And I think that is a huge, huge part of it. Dani Alves, obviously, I think the most decorated player in history, right? I think he's won the most trophies. So that's definitely going to help. I'm going to very quickly go through the squad just with the names, because it is ridiculous. You've, of course, got Alisson, Ederson, Dani Alves, Danilo, Alexandro, Bremer, Militao, Thiago Silva, Bruno Guimaraes, Casemiro. It is endless, and I've not even got to the strikers. But which players from this tournament do you think people don't know now, but will know afterwards?
Okay, so it's interesting. I would, a year ago or maybe 2 years ago, I would have said a player like Bruno Guimaraes or Lucas Paquetá. They, of course, have made the jump to England, and I think that's really increased their notoriety, at least in the English-speaking world, in the English-speaking media. I think people have seen how good they are, and I think they were a little underrated by people who either didn't watch them on a weekly basis or just didn't keep up with the Brazilian players. But I do think there's two players that are going to be interesting to watch, and we'll see how much play time they get. Two players coming out of the Brazilian league. The striker Pedro, who's had an absolutely incredible season. He plays for Flamengo, who just won Copa Libertadores, and they won the Copa do Brasil. He is their leading top scorer, which is something to say when you look at their other strikers and other attacking players. And his teammate, Everton Ribeiro, again, a very offensive player, attacking midfield. He had the assist in the Libertadores winning goal this year. And again, I think these are players that a lot of people either discount them or they just simply don't know enough about them. They haven't seen enough from them because they play in South America. These are players that are really high quality, and I think they could surprise a lot of people who aren't familiar with how great they can be. Especially they've been in these high pressure matches, these finals. They play for one of the best teams in Brazil. So, and by the way, and also they're pretty popular amongst the Seleção team. So I think they're going to be good, kind of being like the rah-rah guys. And as well, if they need to, I'm not sure if either of them are going to be in, the starting 11, but coming off the bench, I think they're going to be dangerous, especially Pedro.
Nice. Yeah, when I saw a few players from the Brazilian league, I was like, I need to look those up and see what to expect, because I am looking forward to discovering a lot of players this tournament. But as you can see, I am an Arsenal fan, so I need to very quickly ask, what do you think the chances are of Martinelli? How much playing time is he going to get? Because he's killing it this year.
He is killing it. And that was a player that raised some eyebrows, because everyone has that. I mean, Brazil produces it's like they have an industrial plant of tricky wingers that can score goals.
Yeah.
And everyone has their favorite, and Gabriel Martinelli, I think, deservedly got the call. He's been great for Arsenal. He was a standout for his club Ituano in Brazil, who is a third division side, maybe fourth even at the time. Kind of an unheard of side that we only really knew them because they play in the Sao Paulo state tournament and they've won it. But really outside of Brazil, kind of a no-name club. And so to sign a player like that, a club like Arsenal, he's going to be good. But yeah, I think Gabriel Martinelli is going to see some time, especially in the group stage. Especially if they win their first two games. I think Chicha is going to their last game, I think, is against Cameroon. So I think I could see some rotation going there. And of course, I mean, he is absolutely rapid. So I think him coming on in the later stages of a match, either to bolster attack if they need a goal, or just to keep that counterattacking threat if they're just trying to lock up shop, then I think he could see some time. I'm not going to say that he's going to be the first choice, but I do think we're definitely going to see him out on the pitch, and I could even see him maybe grabbing a late goal in a 4-1 win or a 3-1 win or something like that.
Nice. I'm absolutely in love with him, as you can probably guess. But moving on, because we could keep going on about him for another 20 minutes. I think there's only really one answer to this question, but I'll see what you've got. What constitutes a successful tournament for Brazil?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. There's only one correct answer, and that's the win. And that's always the case for Brazil. I think it's it's the case again this year. Anything less than that is failure.
And do you think with this squad this time, with teams in Europe not in the best form, does it feel like people expect it a little bit more this time?
I think that's maybe less so about the teams in Europe, but I think the squad. I think the squad is the best team that they've put together since 2006. Mm-hmm. And I think that with the players that they have, I mean, they should be in there. There's no excuses. There's no excuses. Mm-hmm. And I think especially, I'm not sure if this helps with the pressure or what, but Neymar has even said that this could be, or he's hinted at the possibility that this is possibly going to be his last World Cup and possibly his last involvement in the Seleção, the national team. I'm a little bit skeptical of that, but yeah, so there's pressure, and I think that with the players, and especially in the form they are right now, that you could be right. I think there could be, at least since 2014, the most amount of pressure for this team to hoist that trophy.
Wow, it is. Yeah, I can only imagine the level of pressure from a Brazilian crowd. But we're going to move on to your bold predictions for the tournament. So starting with, and again, it could be one theme continuing through this video, but which team do you expect to lift the trophy just slightly before Christmas?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would say this even if I had never picked up this book at my grandfather's house and never became a Santos fan and never had any interest in Brazilian football. I think Brazil are going to win. I think they have all the players they need. They're perfectly capable. They have players that are young and exciting. They have players that are experienced and can get the job done. And they've got a bunch of players that are in form. So I think if Chiche can find the right mix of players to have on the pitch at the right time, I think they can beat anyone in this tournament, and I expect them to do so.
Nice. Okay, so who do you think is going to get the Golden Boot?
The Golden Boot, I'm going to go Harry Kane. I think he is going to get the Golden Boot, and he's prolific, and I just think he's going to have a lot of opportunities. I think England are going to have another good run in the World Cup.
Nice. Yeah, he's a popular choice. He is a popular choice. I think the group stage, he should get a few, touch wood, hopefully. Nice. Who will get player of the tournament?
Okay, so this is another this is maybe one of my more bold predictions. Maybe not, though. I think Vinicius Jr. is going to have a breakout tournament. I think he's going to be what Neymar was in 2014. He's going to be the talisman for Brazil. I think he's going to be the most productive. He had a great campaign last year, of course, with Real Madrid, winning the Champions League. It wasn't even too long ago. I was getting DMs from people saying, this is maybe 2 years ago, is Vinny a flop, right? After, however, he's 20 years old. And what I said then was that, let him mature, let him refine his game. He's going to find, a lot of this stuff comes with experience. You can't just expect everyone to come on, break onto the scene and score 1 million goals and bag 1 million assists. So I think last season I felt a little bit vindicated in his performance, and he's been great this season too. He's in great form. And I think Neymar is going to be pulling the strings and playing in lots of balls to Vinicius, and I think that link up is gonna be really fruitful for Brazil. And I think when all is said and done, I think Vinicius Jr. is going to be that MVP for the tournament.
Nice, I like it. Good. Penultimate one. Which team is the dark horse? Which team's going to surprise people the most?
So we were DMing on Twitter a little bit, and I made a joke about how I was overthinking about this, and I had all the scenarios in the World Cup bracket and drawing this. Okay, if they win this group, they could get this. And I settled upon a kind of two-part answer, which the second part was, I think that Senegal was going to be kind of your your dark horse.
Yes.
And I think that if they could, they had the talent to win the group. I think things would go their way, and they could get an easier opponent in the round of 16, and then who knows from there. But just today, I think I saw Sadio Mane is going to be missing the World Cup.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge.
So I saw that at work today, and we spoke before. I just walked in, and I haven't really had a chance to think through. But the more as I was looking into it, I think still Senegal can surprise. One of my kind of the first place I went was Denmark. I think they're kind of the best of the rest. But when I was looking at their path, it looked pretty challenging. I'm not sure if they are going to be able to get a win in the round of 16. But I think they had a great Euros a couple years back. And I think they've got a lot of talent. And so I could see it being either one of those teams. I'm sure at least Denmark is probably a pretty popular answer. I'd love to see Senegal have a run. But we'll see how defanged they'll be without Mane.
Yeah, I think they're both teams that people have expected. They're kind of on the radar. I really like on the pod we covered Senegal, and of course their win at the AFCON was incredible. So it's a team that I really, really enjoyed watching. I'm excited to see them again, definitely. So finally, the last question: with your head and not your heart, where will Brazil finish in this tournament?
Well, it's really hard to separate the two.
That is the tough bit. That is the tough bit.
I mean, again, I and this could be just my heart totally taking over my head here. I do feel that even though I am this fan of Brazilian football and Brazil in general, that I do think that if I had never gone down this path and this journey, I think that I would still think that they're going to win. I think, though, the one knock you could say on them is that they haven't really been tested against high-quality European opposition. And I think that's something that, people have reservations about. And that's really what I've seen that it kind of makes me just a little bit questionable. But I think that at the end of the day, they will finish either as a finalist or the winner. And again, it really depends on who they get in the final and how the squad is gelling. But again, I think they're going to win. And I'm saying that with both my head and heart.
Nice. I like it. They're unified. That's not often that happens. Good. Yeah. Okay. So, Peter, thanks for coming on to the show. For our viewers, if they want to keep up with the Brazilian League and keeping up with Santos, where can they find you?
Yeah. So first and foremost, you can go on Google or Spotify or Apple and follow the Smoking Snake podcast. It's a Brazilian football podcast in English that I host with my friend Enric. And we talk about on a weekly basis Brazilian football. Find that Twitter account at the Smoking SNK on Twitter. You can follow me at Santos FC _ INGLES English. And I tweet pretty much mostly about Santos in English, but also about Brazilian football in general, and really, I guess, whatever I'm feeling at the time. So
nice, beautiful.
Yeah, so that's where you can find me, and I would highly encourage you to check it out if you have any interest in Brazilian football.
Perfect. So, viewers, as you can see somewhere down here, you will see the like and subscribe button. Please hit both of them. We'd really appreciate it. And around here or here, you should see the rest of the videos of our World Cup. I'm going to say Odyssey at this point. We are aiming to get all 32 countries. You'll be able to see if we've done it. So cross your fingers for us, and we will see you next time. Thanks again, Pete. Golazo!